The disappearance of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro has shaken California to its core. What began as a missing child case quickly turned into something far darker, as investigators zeroed in on the people who should have been protecting him the most, his own parents. Both Jake and Rebecca Haro now stand accused of murder, even though Emmanuel's body has never been found. The case has left the community reeling with grief and unanswered questions. As police uncover disturbing details about the couple's troubled past, along with shocking allegations of abuse and criminal history, the story grows even more chilling. How could two parents, once described as a loving young couple, spiral into a nightmare that ended with the death of their child? The Haros backgrounds reveal secrets that may explain why this tragedy unfolded the way it did. This case is more than just a crime, it's a mystery that continues to haunt investigators and the public alike. Was Emmanuel's death the result of long-brewing violence, or something even more sinister? Stay tuned as we uncover the timeline, the evidence, and the haunting cliffhangers that surround this case. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and drop a comment below with your thoughts, because this is one story that demands to be heard. The missing infant and the unraveling alibi. On August 14, 2025, 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro vanished under bizarre circumstances in Yucaipa, California. His mother, Rebecca Haro, tearfully told authorities she had been attacked while changing Emmanuel's diaper outside a Big Five store. She claimed to have lost consciousness, and when she came to, the infant had disappeared. Authorities soon discovered glaring inconsistencies in Rebecca's account. No surveillance footage, witnesses, or signs of a physical struggle aligned with her version of events, and notably, no Amber Alert was issued due to a lack of suspect or vehicle description. Investigation followed swiftly, search warrants were executed, digital evidence was seized, and investigators combed the Haro property. Then, on August 22, both parents, Rebecca and her husband Jake Haro, were arrested on suspicion of murder. Authorities stated they had concluded the kidnapping was fabricated and believed Emmanuel to be deceased. In a chilling twist, Jake was later seen in an orange prison jumpsuit, assisting in a search for Emmanuel's body alongside cadaver dogs, yet the infant's remains were never found. Court documents reveal a grim history. In 2018, Jake was involved in a child cruelty case involving his infant daughter. He pled guilty, but that plea didn't see a lengthy prison sentence. Instead, in 2023, he received probation and 180 days in a work release program. That case, the child's injuries were severe: skull fracture, rib breaks, brain hemorrhage, resulting in permanent disabilities. Both he and his then-partner, Vanessa Avina, pleaded guilty. Moreover, in 2024, Jake faced another legal issue. He was charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm and ammunition, despite his felony record. To complicate the picture further, Rebecca's brother, James Bushin, was convicted of murder in 2017 and is serving a 50-to-life sentence, adding yet another layer of tragedy to the family narrative. The stage is set for part 2. We've seen the vanishing of an infant, a mother's fractured narrative, the arrest of both parents, and disturbing family history, but how did Rebecca and Jake meet? What paths led them into each other's lives? And most chillingly, what really happened to baby Emmanuel? Cover the Haros backstory, delve into how they crossed paths, explore their past relationships, and peel back the layers of this unfolding tragedy that's shaking California. When investigators began piecing together the lives of Jake and Rebecca Haro, it quickly became clear that Emmanuel's disappearance wasn't a sudden tragedy, it was the culmination of years of instability, violence, and troubled relationships. How Jake and Rebecca met. Jake Haro was already known to law enforcement long before Emmanuel's birth. By the time he crossed paths with Rebecca, he had a felony record and a history of violence. According to court filings, his reputation in Cabazon and nearby Riverside County was far from clean. Rebecca, meanwhile, came from a fractured household herself. Her family's name had already made headlines years earlier when her older brother, James Bushin, was sentenced to 50 years to life for a grisly 2017 murder. The two reportedly met through mutual friends in the Inland Empire. Both were looking for stability, but what they found in each other was something else entirely: a relationship marked by volatility, secrecy, and run-ins with the law. Family members later described their union as trouble waiting to happen. Jake's record is lengthy and disturbing. 2018, child cruelty case. He was convicted after his infant daughter from a previous relationship suffered catastrophic injuries, rib fractures, skull fracture, and brain trauma. That child survived but was left with permanent disabilities. Jake pled guilty and, in what many critics now call a tragic failure of the system, avoided a long prison term. Instead, he received probation and a short-term work release sentence. 2024, weapons charges. Jake was later arrested for being a felon in possession of a firearm and ammunition, a clear violation of his probation and prior felony status. Despite these red flags, he remained free when Emmanuel was born in early 2025. Rebecca Haro's background raised its own alarms. Growing up in a household already marred by crime, she had seen her brother sent away for life for murder. Relatives claimed she carried a blind loyalty to family, even when evidence suggested otherwise. Some described her as vulnerable and easily manipulated, while others insisted she knew exactly what she was doing when she stood by Jake. When investigators questioned her after Emmanuel vanished, she stuck firmly to her story of a kidnapping even as it fell apart under scrutiny. At one point, detectives said she abruptly ended her interview when pressed about inconsistencies. Between Jake's violent history, Rebecca's family ties to crime, and their rocky relationship, detectives now believe Emmanuel's case was less about a stranger kidnapping and more about a tragedy that began within the walls of his own home. But the biggest question still lingers: what happened in those crucial hours before Rebecca reported Emmanuel missing? Let's dive into the final hours before Emmanuel disappeared, what surveillance footage revealed, why police rejected Rebecca's kidnapping claim, and the shocking moment Jake, in a jail jumpsuit, was marched out to help search for his own son's body. The truth about Emmanuel's last moments may be even darker than anyone imagined. On the morning of August 14, 2025, 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro was reported missing under strange circumstances. His mother, Rebecca Haro, called police outside a Big Five sporting goods store in Yucaipa, California. She told investigators a chilling story: she had been changing Emmanuel's diaper in the car when a man attacked her, knocking her unconscious. When she came to, Emmanuel was gone. But detectives immediately noticed problems. No Amber Alert. Authorities declined to issue one because Rebecca could not provide a suspect description, vehicle, or license plate. No evidence of a struggle. Surveillance cameras from the strip mall showed no attackers, no abduction, no chaos, only Rebecca's movements. Inconsistencies in her story. Investigators later said her statements shifted under questioning, and her explanation of how she lost consciousness didn't align with medical signs. By the evening of August 14, the Haros account of a kidnapping was already unraveling. Detectives executed search warrants on the Haro home and vehicles. Cadaver dogs were deployed in multiple locations, including near the 60 freeway in Moreno Valley. Rebecca cut her police interview short when pressed about inconsistencies. Meanwhile, Jake, already in custody, was spotted in a haunting scene, wearing an orange jail jumpsuit, helping deputies search a field for Emmanuel's remains, with cadaver dogs leading the way. But no body was found. By August 22, police made their move. Both Jake and Rebecca were arrested on suspicion of murder. Investigators stated clearly that there had been no kidnapping. Instead, evidence suggested Emmanuel had died at the hands of his parents, and the fabricated abduction was a cover story. The public was stunned, especially after learning Jake's past, his prior conviction for violently injuring another infant years earlier. Critics asked why he had ever been allowed back into society without stricter monitoring. Despite extensive searches, Emmanuel's body has still not been located. Without remains, detectives must piece together a case from forensics, inconsistencies, and the Haros' own actions. And that leaves one terrifying possibility: did Jake and Rebecca hide their son's body somewhere investigators haven't yet found? Or is there a darker truth no one has uncovered yet? We'll explore the community's reaction, the court proceedings so far, and the unanswered questions surrounding Emmanuel's fate. We'll also look at how this case has reignited debates over child protection failures and whether this tragedy could have been prevented. When news broke that Jake and Rebecca Haro had been arrested for the murder of their 7-month-old son Emmanuel, the community was shaken to its core. What began as a frantic search for a kidnapped infant had twisted into something darker, a case of betrayal and brutality that, according to prosecutors, came from within the baby's own family. August 22, 2025, both parents were officially charged with murder. Jake faced added scrutiny because of his prior conviction for child abuse, while prosecutors argued that Rebecca was complicit in covering up the truth. Initial hearings. At their first court appearance, the Haros showed little emotion. Prosecutors emphasized that Emmanuel's disappearance was not a stranger danger case, but a crime concealed by lies. Evidence battle. Because Emmanuel's body has not been found, the case hinges on circumstantial and forensic evidence. Detectives pointed to the inconsistencies in Rebecca's story, traces of biological evidence found during searches, and Jake's disturbing criminal history. Neighbors in Yucaipa described feeling betrayed. Many had joined search parties for Emmanuel, only to later learn that the parents themselves were under suspicion. "We were out here passing out flyers, searching fields, praying for him," one neighbor told reporters. And all along, the truth was closer to home. Child advocates expressed outrage that Jake's prior abuse case hadn't kept him away from young children. Critics now argue that probation and light sentencing allowed a dangerous man to remain free, ending in Emmanuel's disappearance. Despite the charges, key mysteries remain. 1. Where is Emmanuel's body? Weeks of searching with cadaver dogs have yielded nothing. Without a body, the family can't bury him, and prosecutors face a tougher case in court. 2. What role did Rebecca truly play? Was she an active participant in Emmanuel's death, or a mother who panicked and covered up for Jake? Her insistence on the kidnapping story has left investigators skeptical. 3. Why did Jake join the search in a jail jumpsuit? Authorities escorted him back to one of the search areas, where he helped comb through brush. Was this a last-ditch attempt to locate Emmanuel, or a cruel display of control? As the case moves through the courts, the Haros' fate will be decided by judges and juries, but Emmanuel's fate is still shrouded in mystery. What happened to the missing baby's body? And will prosecutors be able to secure a conviction without it? We'll explore the legal challenges ahead, the possibility of a nobody conviction, and the haunting parallels to Jake's past abuse case that prosecutors may use to seal the Haros' fate. The Haro case has now shifted from frantic searches and public outcry to the courtroom, where prosecutors face their toughest challenge yet, proving murder without a body. In criminal law, securing a murder conviction without a recovered body is notoriously difficult. Defense attorneys can argue, if there's no body, how do we know there's been a murder at all? But prosecutors in San Bernardino County say they're ready. They point to inconsistent statements, Rebecca's ever-changing kidnapping story. Digital evidence, messages, phone data, and possible location pings contradicting the Haros claims. Forensic traces, investigators reportedly found biological material linked to Emmanuel in areas suggesting foul play. Jake's history, his 2018 conviction for nearly killing his infant daughter, a chilling pattern that prosecutors will likely highlight. Jake's defense team is expected to frame him as a man with a troubled past but no direct evidence tying him to Emmanuel's death. Without a body, they may suggest Emmanuel could have been abducted after all. Rebecca's attorneys may take a different approach, portraying her as a manipulated wife, pressured by a violent partner, clinging to the kidnapping story out of fear. One of the prosecution's strongest weapons may be Jake's prior conviction. The haunting similarities, 2 infants, 2 violent outcomes, and Jake at the center, paint a devastating picture of history repeating itself. Critics of the justice system argue that if Jake had been sentenced more harshly for the first child abuse case, Emmanuel would still be alive today. That failure now looms large over the trial. If convicted, both Jake and Rebecca face life in prison. If acquitted, they could walk free, leaving Emmanuel's fate officially unsolved, a nightmare scenario for the community that rallied to find him. As the courtroom battle looms, the question grows louder: can prosecutors prove murder without a body? Or will the Haros find cracks in the case wide enough to walk free? The disappearance of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro has left behind not just grief and anger, but also a courtroom battle that could define justice in this case. As prosecutors prepare to take Jake and Rebecca Haro to trial, every detail of their past, every inconsistency, and every forensic clue will be under the microscope. Legal experts predict the Haros case could take months, even years to resolve. Preliminary hearings, prosecutors will present evidence that Emmanuel is dead, despite his body not being found. Motions from defense, expect challenges to suppress certain forensic evidence and motions to exclude Jake's prior child abuse conviction from being introduced. Full trial. If it moves forward, prosecutors will try to construct a timeline of Emmanuel's last hours, contrasting it with Rebecca's fabricated kidnapping story. Investigators who tracked inconsistencies in Rebecca's statements. Forensic experts on biological traces found during searches. Digital analysts to present phone records, text messages, and location data. Medical professionals from Jake's past child abuse case, drawing disturbing parallels. Family members and neighbors who saw the Haros behavior in the days surrounding Emmanuel's disappearance. Each testimony will paint a clearer picture of whether Emmanuel's parents were grieving victims or cold-blooded perpetrators. For Emmanuel's extended family and the Yucaipa community, the trial is reopening raw wounds. Neighbors who once helped search for Emmanuel now feel betrayed. Child advocates are calling for reforms in sentencing, pointing to Jake's earlier conviction as proof the system failed to protect Emmanuel. Relatives of Rebecca, already scarred by her brother's life sentence for murder, are now bracing for another devastating courtroom saga. One neighbor's words captured the mood. "We wanted to believe Emmanuel would be found alive. Now we just want to believe he'll have justice." Even if prosecutors secure a conviction, one mystery remains unsolved: where is Emmanuel's body? Without that answer, his family cannot lay him to rest, and his community cannot find closure. The silence surrounding his final resting place makes the tragedy even more unbearable. As the trial draws nearer, the world waits to see, will justice finally speak for baby Emmanuel, or will the truth remain buried forever? As the Haro case moves through the courts, one question lingers louder than the rest: could all of this have been avoided? For many, the answer is yes, and the finger points directly at the justice system and child protection services. Jake's 2018 child abuse conviction: he was found guilty of nearly killing his infant daughter from a previous relationship. The child suffered broken ribs, a skull fracture, and brain trauma. Instead of a lengthy prison term, Jake served probation and a short work release sentence. That decision now looms large as a fatal mistake. Weapons charges in 2024. Despite being a convicted felon, Jake was caught with a firearm and ammunition. Again, he avoided long prison time. Rebecca's family history: her brother is serving 50 years to life for murder. Detectives now suggest the Haro household was already under strain, yet no proactive monitoring was in place once baby Emmanuel was born. Advocates argue the child welfare agencies should have been more aggressive. Given Jake's prior record of abusing an infant, why was he allowed to raise another child without heightened oversight? Some even claim Emmanuel slipped through the cracks because of an overburdened system, too many cases, not enough follow-ups. The case has sparked outrage in Yucaipa and beyond. Community members say they feel betrayed after volunteering to search for Emmanuel, only to learn his parents may have been involved all along. Child advocacy groups are demanding reforms: tougher sentencing for child abuse, lifetime restrictions on convicted abusers raising children, and stricter monitoring of households with prior offenses. Legal experts note that Emmanuel's case could become a precedent-setting trial in California, shaping how courts handle no-body homicide prosecutions in child abuse cases. Even as the Haros face trial, Emmanuel's story is becoming larger than one family's downfall. It's a grim symbol of what happens when warning signs are ignored. The heartbreak is that Emmanuel never had a chance to grow up. He was born into a family already haunted by violence, and despite every warning sign, he was left vulnerable. As reforms are debated and prosecutors prepare for trial, one truth hangs in the air: the system failed Emmanuel once, will it fail him again in court? The arrests of Jake and Rebecca Haro have shaken Yucaipa to its core, but the story is far from over. The courtroom battle ahead will determine whether justice for baby Emmanuel is ever truly achieved, or whether unanswered questions will linger forever. Without Emmanuel's body, the case is a no-body homicide prosecution, one of the hardest cases to prove. Prosecutors must rely on forensic evidence from the home, contradictions in the Haros shifting stories, behavioral evidence, fleeing the state, failing polygraphs, and avoiding cooperation. Jake's violent history with children. Experts say jurors will have to rely on patterns of violence and circumstantial proof, rather than the usual physical evidence. Defense attorneys are expected to hammer on reasonable doubt. No body. No clear cause of death. No definitive timeline. They may argue Emmanuel could still be alive somewhere, or that evidence was mishandled. Their goal: fracture the jury's certainty and paint the state's case as built on assumptions. Possible outcomes: 1. Conviction. If prosecutors secured guilty verdicts, both Jake and Rebecca could face life sentences without parole. 2. Split verdict. One parent convicted, the other acquitted, raising painful new questions about responsibility. 3. Acquittal. If the jury cannot agree, the Haros could walk free, sparking public outrage and leaving Emmanuel's fate legally unresolved. Even before the trial begins, Emmanuel's name has become a rallying cry. His short life and mysterious disappearance have exposed glaring failures in both the justice system and child protection services. Community advocates are pushing for Emmanuel's Law, a proposal to strengthen sentencing for repeat child abusers and expand monitoring of at-risk households. If passed, his case could permanently reshape child safety laws in California. But beyond policy, Emmanuel's legacy is deeply human, a reminder of how quickly innocence can be stolen, and how devastating it is when warning signs are ignored. As the trial date approaches, one thing is certain: Emmanuel's story will not fade quietly. His name will echo in courtrooms, in protests, and in the hearts of those who searched for him. And the haunting question will remain: will justice come too late for baby Emmanuel, or will his story finally force change?